On September 17, 1999, a young man died. He was only 18 years old. His name was Jesse Gelsinger. 4 days before, he went to a hospital. He wanted to help doctors test a new treatment, but the treatment killed him. It was supposed to save lives. Instead, it made his body shut down. Everything went wrong in just 4 days. Therefore, what should have been a win became a loss. A huge loss. But here's the big question. Did his death save millions? Did one terrible moment force the world to change? In the next 45 minutes, you will see how one death changed medicine forever. You will learn about hidden dangers. You will understand why we still live with the results of that day. So ask yourself, what price should we pay for progress? Let me tell you about Jesse. Jesse Gelsinger was born on June 18, 1981. He lived near Philadelphia. He loved life, he loved his family, he was a normal kid in many ways, but Jesse was not totally healthy. He had a disease called OTC deficiency. His body could not break down protein the right way. When you eat meat or eggs, your body turns protein into waste. That waste has to leave your body. But Jesse's body could not do this well. Therefore, he had to be very careful. He had to eat special foods. He had to take medicine every day. About 50 pills every day. This sounds bad, but Jesse's case was mild. Some babies with OTC deficiency die very young. Jesse was lucky. He lived. He could go to school. He could have friends. He could even help others. Now let's talk about the late 1990s. This was an exciting time for medicine. Scientists thought they could cure diseases by fixing genes. Your genes are like tiny instruction books inside your body. They tell your cells what to do. But sometimes genes have mistakes. These mistakes cause diseases. Therefore, scientists had a big idea. They would fix the broken genes. They would put good genes into sick people. This was called gene therapy. In 1990, a little girl named Ashanti da Silva got gene therapy. She was only 4 years old. She had a disease that made her very sick. But the gene therapy worked. She got better. Therefore, everyone got excited. The world thought we were close to curing all genetic diseases. Money poured in, companies formed, universities started big studies. Gene therapy was the future, but was it safe? In 1999, Jesse heard about a gene therapy trial. It was at the University of Pennsylvania. A doctor named James Wilson was running it. They wanted to test gene therapy for OTC deficiency. Jesse was 18 now. He could make his own choice. The doctors told Jesse this trial would not cure him, it was just a test. They wanted to see if the treatment was safe. They would give him the gene therapy and watch what happened. Jesse said yes. He wanted to help. He thought about all the babies who die from OTC deficiency. Maybe this test would save them one day. Therefore, on September 13, 1999, Jesse went to the hospital. He was calm. He was ready. He trusted the doctors. But here is what no one told Jesse. Some animals in earlier tests had died. Monkeys got very sick. Their bodies had bad reactions. The gene therapy hurt them, but the doctors did not tell Jesse this. They also did not tell him that other people in the trial had problems. Not big problems, but problems. Therefore, Jesse went into the trial without knowing all the risks. There was another issue. Jesse's ammonia levels were high that day. Ammonia is the waste your body makes from protein. Remember, Jesse's body could not handle ammonia well. The trial rules said people with high ammonia should not get the treatment. It was too risky. But the doctors let Jesse into the trial anyway. Therefore, from the very start, Jesse was in more danger than anyone said. On September 13th, Jesse got the gene therapy. Doctors put it into a blood vessel near his liver. The treatment used a virus to carry the good gene into his cells. This is normal for gene therapy. Scientists use viruses because viruses are good at getting into cells. They take out the bad parts of the virus. They put in the good gene. Then they put the virus into your body. But viruses can be dangerous. Even when you take out the bad parts, the body might still see the virus as an enemy. Your immune system might attack. And that is what happened to Jesse. Within hours, Jesse felt sick. He had a fever. He felt pain. The doctors watched him closely, but things got worse fast. 4 days later, on September 17th, 1999, Jesse died. He never woke up. His organs failed, his brain stopped working. Therefore, the question became, how did this happen? What went so wrong? To understand Jesse's death, we need to go back further. Let's talk about 1990 again. That year, Ashanti Da Silva got the first gene therapy. She had a disease called ADA-SCID. Her immune system did not work, she got sick all the time, but gene therapy helped her. Doctors put good genes into her blood cells, her immune system got better. Therefore, everyone thought gene therapy was safe. They thought it was ready, but they were wrong. The truth is, gene therapy was still very new. Scientists did not understand all the risks. They did not know how the body would react. But companies wanted to make money, universities wanted to be first. Everyone rushed ahead. Therefore, the testing was not as careful as it should have been. Let me explain how gene therapy works. You need a way to get the good gene into cells. Scientists call this a vector. Usually they use a virus as the vector. They tried many different viruses. Some worked better than others, but all of them had risks. The virus that Jesse got was called an adenovirus. You might have had an adenovirus before. It causes colds and flu. But when you put a lot of adenovirus into the body at once, bad things can happen. Your immune system can go crazy. It attacks too hard. Therefore, the vector itself was dangerous. But scientists in the 1990s did not fully understand this yet. Now let's talk about the rules. When you test new medicine on people, you need to follow rules. These rules protect people. They make sure tests are safe. In America, a group called the NIH watched over gene therapy. They had a committee. This committee checked every trial. They made sure trials followed the rules, but the rules were new. The committee was still learning. Therefore, the system was weak. There were holes. And some scientists did not even follow the weak rules. Here's something important. Before you test medicine on people, you test it on animals. For Jesse's trial, they tested the gene therapy on mice. They tested it on monkeys. Some of the animals got very sick. Some died. Their livers failed. Their immune systems went wild. The gene therapy caused major problems, but the scientists did not stop. They did not tell everyone about these deaths. Therefore, the warning signs were there, but people ignored them. Why did they ignore the warnings? Money was one reason. Gene therapy was hot. Companies were worth millions of dollars. Universities got big grants. Scientists could become famous. Dr. James Wilson, the man running Jesse's trial, had his own company. His company owned part of the gene therapy they were testing. Therefore, if the trial worked, Wilson would get rich. This is called a conflict of interest. When you might make money from your own test, you might not be fair. You might see what you want to see. But Wilson did not tell people about this conflict. Not clearly. Let's talk about informed consent. When you join a medical trial, you have to sign papers. These papers explain the risks. They tell you what might go wrong. This is the law. You have a right to know. But what did Jesse's consent form say? It said the gene therapy might not work. It said he might get sick for a few days. It said there was a small risk. But it did not say monkeys had died. It did not say other patients had serious problems. It did not say the vector could make your immune system attack your own body. Therefore, Jesse did not know the real risks. Now we get to the day Jesse joined the trial, September 13th, 1999. Jesse came to the hospital. Doctors checked his blood. His ammonia level was 91. The trial rules said the level had to be under 70. If it was higher, you could not join. Jesse's level was way too high. But the doctors let him in anyway. They thought it would be okay. They thought his case was mild enough. Therefore, they broke their own rules. All of these things came together: the rush testing, the ignored warnings, the conflicts of interest, the weak consent, the broken rules. All of it set up a disaster, and Jesse was in the middle of it. September 13th, 1999, morning. Jesse lay on the hospital bed. Doctors prepared the gene therapy. They would put it into his hepatic artery. This is a blood vessel that goes to the liver. The liver is where OTC deficiency causes problems. Therefore, they wanted the gene therapy to go straight to the liver. The gene therapy was in a liquid. It had billions of adenovirus particles. Each one carried the good gene. Doctors put a tube into Jesse's artery. They pushed the liquid through. The gene therapy went into Jesse's body. At first, everything seemed fine, but within a few hours, Jesse felt sick. He had a fever. His temperature went up. He felt pain in his stomach. He started throwing up. The doctors were worried, but they hoped it would pass. Fevers are normal sometimes. Maybe Jesse's body just needed time. But it did not pass. By the next morning, Jesse was worse. His fever was higher. His eyes turned yellow. This meant his liver was failing. Therefore, doctors knew something was very wrong. They ran tests. Jesse's blood showed huge problems. His liver enzymes were sky high. His blood was not clotting right. His kidneys were starting to fail. His whole body was breaking down. But why? The gene therapy had triggered something called a cytokine storm. This is when your immune system goes wild. It attacks everything. It does not stop. Your immune system is supposed to protect you, but in a cytokine storm, it kills you. The adenovirus vector made Jesse's body think it was under attack. Therefore, his immune system fought back hard, too hard. Doctors tried everything. They gave Jesse medicine to calm his immune system. They gave him fluids. They watched him every minute, but nothing worked. By September 15th, Jesse was in a coma. His brain was swelling. His lungs were filling with fluid. His liver was dead. Machines kept him alive. Now, let's ask a hard question. Did the doctors tell Jesse this could happen? Let's look at the consent form again. It said there might be flu-like symptoms. It said his liver might get inflamed for a while, but it did not say you could die in 4 days. It did not say your organs could all fail at once. And here is the key fact. The doctors knew this was possible. In the animal tests, some monkeys had died this way. Their immune systems went crazy. Their organs failed. But the consent form did not mention those deaths. Therefore, Jesse could not make a fully informed choice. Some people say Jesse would have joined anyway. He was brave. He wanted to help others. Maybe that is true, but he had a right to know. That is the law. That is ethics. Let's talk about the other people in the trial. Jesse was not the first. Other patients had already gotten the gene therapy. Some of them had problems too. One man's liver got very inflamed. Another woman got sick for weeks. But the trial kept going. The scientists thought the problems were not too bad. They thought they could manage the risks. Therefore, they kept giving the gene therapy to more people. They kept going until Jesse died. On September 17th, 1999, doctors did one last test. They checked Jesse's brain activity. There was none. Jesse was brain dead. His body was still alive on machines, but Jesse was gone. Therefore, his father made the choice. He told doctors to turn off the machines. Jesse Gelsinger died at 2:30 in the afternoon. He had been in the trial for 4 days. The hospital room went quiet. Nurses cried. Doctors stood in shock. This was supposed to be a routine test. This was supposed to be safe. But a young man was dead, and the world was about to learn what happened. Here is the thing about Jesse's death. It was not just one person dying. It was not just one family's pain. Jesse's death was the moment when gene therapy's dark side came out. All the corners that were cut, all the rules that were broken, all the conflicts that were hidden. Therefore, everything was about to change. The news was about to break. Investigators were about to dig deep. The whole gene therapy field was about to face a reckoning. But first, let me tell you what happened next. The news broke fast. Within days, reporters were asking questions. How did an 18-year-old die in a gene therapy trial? What went wrong? The University of Pennsylvania tried to control the story. They said it was a rare reaction. They said no one could have predicted it. But that was not true. Therefore, the real story started to come out. The FDA launched an investigation. The FDA is the group that approves medicine in America. They wanted to know everything. They looked at the trial documents. They talked to the scientists. They checked the animal data. And they found problems, big problems. First, they found that monkeys had died in the tests. The scientists knew this, but they did not report it properly. They did not tell the FDA about all the deaths. Therefore, the FDA did not know how dangerous the vector was. Second, they found that other patients in the trial had serious reactions. One man almost died. His liver nearly failed. But the scientists kept going. They did not stop the trial. They did not rewrite the consent forms. Therefore, later patients like Jesse did not know about these reactions. Third, they found the conflict of interest. Dr. James Wilson owned part of the company testing the gene therapy. The University of Pennsylvania had stock in the company too. Therefore, if the trial succeeded, they would make millions of dollars. This created pressure to keep going, pressure to make it work. But Wilson did not clearly tell patients about this. The consent forms did not explain it well. Therefore, patients did not know their doctors had money on the line. The FDA was angry. They shut down the trial. They shut down other gene therapy trials at the university too. But the problems went deeper than one university. The FDA checked gene therapy trials across America. They found violations everywhere. Some trials did not report side effects. Some trials broke their own rules. Some trials had conflicts of interest. Therefore, trust in gene therapy collapsed. The public was outraged. How could this happen? How could a volunteer die? Families of other trial patients felt betrayed. They thought they were helping science, but they were put at risk. One mother said her son could have died too. She said the doctors did not tell her the truth. Therefore, lawsuits started. Jesse's family sued the University of Pennsylvania. They sued Dr. Wilson. They sued the company. Other families sued too. The gene therapy field went into crisis. Investors pulled their money out. Biotech companies lost millions. Some companies shut down. Scientists could not get funding. They could not start new trials. Everything stopped. Therefore, the field that was supposed to cure disease almost died itself. But here's the bigger question. Should gene therapy have stopped? Some people said yes. They said it was too dangerous. They said we were not ready. Other people said no. They said we just needed better rules. They said gene therapy could still save lives. This became a huge debate. On one side were patient groups. These were families with sick kids, kids with genetic diseases, kids who might die young. They wanted gene therapy to keep going. They said the risk was worth it. They said their kids had no other hope. Therefore, they pushed for gene therapy to continue. On the other side were ethicists. These are people who study right and wrong. They were worried about safety. They were worried about consent. They were worried about money influencing science. Therefore, they pushed for strict rules. In the middle were scientists. Some wanted to keep testing. Others wanted to stop and rethink everything. The field was torn apart. Meanwhile, Jesse's family grieved. His father, Paul Gelsinger, spoke out. He said Jesse was a hero. He said Jesse died trying to help others, but Paul was also angry. He felt lied to. He felt his son was used. Therefore, Paul became an advocate. He pushed for reform. He wanted better protection for trial volunteers. He wanted Jesse's death to mean something. And it did mean something, but not right away. First, things had to get worse. The gene therapy field was about to enter its darkest period, a period where the dream almost disappeared completely. Let me show you just how bad it got. After Jesse's death, everything changed. But not just in America. All over the world, gene therapy faced a crisis. Let me tell you about what happened next. In Silicon Valley, investors panicked. They had put millions into gene therapy companies, but now those companies were failing. Stock prices crashed. Some companies went bankrupt. The biotech boom turned into a bust. Therefore, money for gene therapy dried up. Scientists could not get funding, labs closed, projects stopped. The field went into hibernation, but there was more bad news coming. In France, another trial was happening. It was for a disease called SCIDX1. Kids with this disease have no immune system. They get sick all the time. They often die young. Scientists tried gene therapy on these kids, and at first it worked. The kids got better. Their immune systems came back. Therefore, everyone celebrated. This was proof gene therapy could work. But then a few years later, something terrible happened. Some of the kids got leukemia, cancer. The gene therapy had caused it. The vector put the good gene in the wrong place. It turned on cancer genes by accident. Therefore, the cure gave them cancer. Some of those kids died. This news came out in the early 2000s, right when the field was trying to recover from Jesse's death. Therefore, it was another huge blow. Now, people were not just worried about immune reactions. They were worried about cancer, too. Gene therapy seemed cursed. Here's the question everyone was asking. Is death an acceptable risk? If you have a deadly disease, would you risk dying from the cure? Some people said, yes, if you are going to die anyway, why not try? But others said no. Medicine should first do no harm. That is the old rule. Therefore, the ethics became very complicated. Think about it this way. Imagine your child has a disease. The disease will kill them in a few years, but there is a treatment. The treatment might cure them, but it might also kill them faster. What would you do? There is no easy answer, but here is what we learned from Jesse. The choice has to be informed. You have to know all the risks. You have to understand what might happen. And scientists have to be honest. They cannot hide problems. They cannot let money influence their decisions. Therefore, Jesse's death became a lesson, a hard lesson, a lesson written in blood. Let's talk about the Gelsinger family again. Paul Gelsinger sued the University of Pennsylvania. The case went on for years. Finally, they settled. The university paid money. But more importantly, they admitted mistakes. They said they should have told Jesse about the animal deaths. They said they should have been more careful. Therefore, the case became a turning point. It showed that scientists could be held responsible. But the settlement did not bring Jesse back. Paul Gelsinger spent years talking about his son. He went to conferences. He met with scientists and ethicists. He pushed for change. He wanted new rules for medical trials. He wanted better consent forms. He wanted oversight that actually worked. Therefore, slowly, things started to change. The NIH rewrote the rules for gene therapy. They made trials report all side effects. They made scientists disclose conflicts of interest. They made consent forms more detailed. The FDA got tougher too. They shut down bad trials faster. They checked data more carefully. Therefore, the system got stronger, safer. But the gene therapy field was still in crisis. Most trials had stopped. Most companies had failed. Most scientists had moved on to other work. The dream of curing genetic disease seemed dead. For almost 10 years, gene therapy was in the wilderness. From 1999 to around 2010, almost nothing happened. Therefore, a generation of patients missed out. Kids who could have been helped had to wait. This is the tragedy. Jesse died, but his death also delayed help for millions of others. That delay was necessary. The field needed to get safer, but it was still sad. Here is what people did not know then. Jesse's death was not the end of gene therapy. It was the beginning of something better. All the reforms that came from his death would make gene therapy work. They would make it safe. Therefore, in a strange way, Jesse's death saved the field he believed in. But we did not know that yet. Not in 2005, not in 2008. We only learned it later. Let me show you how. Now we come to the turning point, the moment when everything Jesse's death caused finally paid off. It took about 10 years. By 2010, gene therapy was starting to come back. But it was different now. Scientists used new vectors, safer vectors. They did not use adenovirus anymore. Instead, they used things called AAV vectors and lentivirus vectors. These were gentler. They did not trigger big immune reactions. They were less likely to cause cancer. Therefore, the treatments got safer. But it was not just the vectors. The whole system changed. Trials were more careful now. Scientists tested on more animals first. They watched patients more closely. They reported every problem. Consent forms got better. They explained risks in plain words. They told patients about every death in animal tests. They explained conflicts of interest clearly. Therefore, patients could make truly informed choices. Oversight got stronger too. The NIH and FDA watched every trial. They checked the data. They made sure rules were followed. Therefore, the disasters of the 1990s could not happen again. And slowly, gene therapy started to work. In 2012, Europe approved the first gene therapy. It was for a rare disease. In 2017, America approved 2 gene therapies, one for a type of blindness, one for cancer. By 2020, dozens of gene therapies were approved. They treated blindness, they treated blood diseases, they even treated some cancers. Therefore, the field came back to life, stronger than before. Let me give you some examples. There is a disease called sickle cell. It is a blood disease. People with it are in pain all the time. They die young. But now, There is gene therapy for it. Doctors take out your blood cells, they fix the gene, they put the cells back in, and it works. People get better, they live normal lives. Therefore, BKH, a disease that killed thousands every year, is now curable. There is another disease that causes blindness. It is genetic. Kids with it slowly go blind. But gene therapy can fix it. Doctors inject the good gene into your eye, and kids can see again. They can go to school, they can play, they can live. Therefore, blindness is reversed. These stories are miracles, real miracles. But here's the thing, these miracles happened because of Jesse. The safety rules that protect patients today came from his death. The careful testing came from his death. The honest consent forms came from his death. Therefore, Jesse's death saved millions. Not right away, not in the way anyone wanted, but over time, through reform, through learning. Every person who gets gene therapy today is protected by lessons written in Jesse's blood. Think about that. A young man died in 1999. He was trying to help others, and in the end, he did help them, just not how he thought. Therefore, his death was not meaningless. It was the most meaningful death in modern medicine. This is the holy moment, the moment where tragedy turns into hope. Jesse's father, Paul Gelsinger, sees it this way too. He says Jesse is a hero. He says Jesse's death changed medicine. But Paul also says we should never forget what was lost. A young man, a son, a brother, a friend. Therefore, progress always has a price. We just have to decide if the price is worth it. So here's the question from the beginning. Did Jesse's death save millions? The answer is yes. But it is a complicated yes, a sad yes. A yes that comes with grief and anger and hard lessons. We celebrate the progress, but we mourn the cost. Here is what we know now. Gene therapy works. It saves lives. It cures diseases that were once hopeless. But it only works because we learned from failure. We learned from death. We learned from Jesse. Therefore, every success in gene therapy today carries his legacy. The families who get their kids treated for sickle cell, they owe Jesse, the people who can see again because of gene therapy. They owe Jesse, the millions who will be helped in the future. They owe Jesse, but they will never know his name. Most people who benefit from gene therapy do not know Jesse Gelsinger. They do not know what happened in 1999. Therefore, part of our job is to remember, to tell his story, to make sure his sacrifice is not forgotten, because if we forget, we might make the same mistakes again, and that would make his death truly meaningless. So where are we now? Let me show you where gene therapy stands today. In 2025, gene therapy is a normal part of medicine. Hospitals offer it. Insurance covers some treatments. Patients ask for it. But it is not cheap. Some gene therapies cost millions of dollars. This creates new problems. Who gets access? Who can afford it? Therefore, we solved one problem but created another. But overall, the field is strong. There are over 100 approved gene therapies worldwide. Thousands more are in testing. Scientists are working on gene therapy for heart disease, for Alzheimer's, for diabetes. Therefore, the future looks bright. But the shadow of Jesse's death still hangs over everything. Scientists today are very careful, maybe too careful. Some people say we are too slow now. They say we could help more people if we took more risks, but most people disagree. They say safety has to come first. Therefore, the debate continues. Progress versus safety. Speed versus caution. Let's talk about what happened to the people in Jesse's story. Dr. James Wilson is still a scientist. He still works in gene therapy. But he stepped back after Jesse's death. He lost his leadership roles. He had to rebuild his reputation. Therefore, even successful scientists pay a price when things go wrong. The University of Pennsylvania learned too. They changed how they run trials. They have stricter oversight now. They are more careful about conflicts of interest. Therefore, institutions can change. They can learn. Paul Gelsinger, Jesse's father, became a voice for patient safety. He speaks at conferences. He advises ethics boards. He makes sure Jesse is remembered. Therefore, tragedy can turn into purpose. But what about Jesse himself? What would he think? We will never know. But people who knew Jesse say he would be proud. He wanted to help others, and in the end, he did. Therefore, his goal was achieved, just not the way he expected. Now let me ask you something. What does this story teach us? First, it teaches us that progress is not free. Every medical breakthrough comes from risk. Someone has to go first. Someone has to test the new treatment. Therefore, we owe a debt to every person who joins a trial. Second, it teaches us that honesty matters. Scientists have to tell the truth. They have to share the risks. They cannot hide problems. Therefore, informed consent is not just a form. It is a sacred promise. Third, it teaches us that money corrupts. When scientists profit from their own trials, they cannot be objective. They see what they want to see. Therefore, we need rules about conflicts of interest, strong rules. Fourth, it teaches us that oversight matters. We need people watching the scientists. We need rules with teeth. Therefore, the FDA and NIH are not obstacles. They are protectors. But here's the big lesson, the lesson that ties everything together. One death can change the world. Jesse Gelsinger was just one person, one young man, one volunteer, but his death changed everything. It changed how we test medicine. It changed how we protect patients. It changed how we think about risk. Therefore, every life matters. Every death means something. You are part of this legacy. If you ever take medicine, you benefit from the rules that came from Jesse's death. If you ever join a trial, you are protected by reforms that came from Jesse's death. If you ever make a medical choice, you have rights that were fought for after Jesse's death. Therefore, this is not just history. This is your life. So remember Jesse Gelsinger. Remember the young man who wanted to help others. Remember the death that saved millions. Remember that progress always has a price. The question is, are we willing to pay it? And if we pay it, do we do it honestly, safely, fairly? These questions matter today as much as they did in 1999 because gene therapy is still growing. New treatments are coming, new risks too. Therefore, we will face these choices again. We will have to decide how much risk is acceptable, how fast we should move, how we balance hope with caution. When we face those choices, think of Jesse. Think of a hospital bed, empty now. Think of a young man who trusted science, who trusted doctors, who wanted to make a difference. He made a difference, the biggest difference. His life ended. So many other lives could continue. That is the legacy. That is the price. That is the story of the death that saved millions.